With a new Marvel movie out every few months, who has time to rewatch them? Well, we took the time and we noticed some interesting things.
It was a whole lot of fun watching Deadpool 2 in theaters, but since it's been a few years, many aspects of the film come across differently nowadays. From celebrity cameos to deleted scenes, there's a lot about the movie that you may not have noticed the first time around. At the beginning of Deadpool 2, Wade Wilson is on top of the world. He's reunited with his soulmate Vanessa, and the two plan to start a family. But they're tragically torn apart when she's killed by a stray bullet meant for her boyfriend. Vanessa's death shapes the tone of the movie and Wade's character arc, as he sees visions of her that he interprets as encouragement to help Russell. However, Deadpool 2 has been criticized for making Vanessa a victim of, quote, fridging. If you're not familiar with the term, it's basically a plot device where a female character is put in peril because the plot requires it. Did you ever see Commando? It's like that. Think Alyssa Milano with Arnie as her dad saving the day at the end. Director David Leitch doesn't believe that Vanessa was fridged because the character emotionally underlines the whole movie. But in truth, Vanessa was initially never supposed to die at all. Leitch admitted on the audio commentary, "We had versions where they broke up and she left him instead of dying." According to Ryan Reynolds, the whole tone of the movie would have changed if Vanessa had lived, as they might have actually had a child. In the end, Leitch felt her death was best for Deadpool's narrative, as he wouldn't have had quite the same motivation if Vanessa had survived. In the original Deadpool, fighting Francis probably would have gone a lot smoother if there were more than 3 mutants present to take him out. Before the big battle though, Wade makes sure the audience knows exactly why we shouldn't expect to see mega-popular mutants like Wolverine or Cyclops this time around.
It's a big house. It's funny that I only ever see 2 of you. It's almost like the studio couldn't afford another X-Man.
Before the climax of Deadpool 2, however, this has proven not to be the case. 6 of the most iconic members of the X-Men are clearly present in the X-Mansion. It's just that they just don't want anything to do with Wade. As annoying as Deadpool can be to deal with, Juggernaut's attack on an orphanage probably warranted some assistance from the more popular members of the superhero team. So why didn't they show up? Once again, the answer is more about behind-the-scenes limitations than plot holes. None of the X-Men were actually able to appear on the Deadpool 2 set because they were busy shooting Dark Phoenix at the time. As with many elements in today's superhero movies, the cameo was added via green screen, which means that Ryan Reynolds never actually got to hang out with James McAvoy and Evan Peters during production. Peters recalled to Cinema Blend, "We had a lot of different versions for when they opened that door and turned to us, but the one they used was pretty chill." Whether he's stranded on Mars or buying a zoo, it's always a pleasure to see Matt Damon on the big screen. Even though he has yet to play a big-shot superhero like his buddy Ben Affleck, Damon has taken the opportunity to appear in multiple Marvel movies. In 2017's Thor Ragnarok, Damon portrayed an Asgardian actor in the role of Loki, and a year later he put on some prosthetics to play a hillbilly who doesn't believe in the hygienic value of toilet paper.
Toilet paper is plenty for an appetizer, but then Huggies Natural Care Wet Wipes.
Details of Damon's cameo were kept under wraps, and while his scene partner Alan Tudyk is named in the credits, Damon isn't. He's credited as Dickie Greenleaf, which is a reference to the talented Mr. Ripley and the identity that his character steals in that film. His cameo wasn't publicized or talked about in interviews until after the movie was released, and plenty of viewers missed that it was him the first time around. Most of the cast and crew members were kept in the dark, as Reynolds and Leitch did everything they could to keep it hush-hush. Reynolds, who co-wrote Deadpool 2, pitched Damon the idea for the toilet paper scene over dinner. Director Leitch later admitted to Collider, "We didn't even tell the crew. His name wasn't on the call sheet. It was a fake name. Nobody really knew what that scene was about. They were like, why are we shooting these 2 rednecks? We just didn't tell anybody." Once Cable arrives in the present, Deadpool assembles the X-Force in order to stop him from harming Russell. The invisible hero Vanisher joins the team, but quickly meets his untimely demise after strong winds blow him into electrical cables and zap him to a crisp. It's only as he's electrocuted that Vanisher becomes visible, and once he is, he's revealed to be played by Brad Pitt.
You guys look amazing. Vanisher, I have no doubt you look amazing too.
If you get the chance to put Brad Pitt in your movie, you should probably put him in your movie, even if it's for less than 3 seconds of screen time. Pitt had originally been in the running to play Cable, but backed out due to a scheduling conflict. Even though Josh Brolin ended up playing the futuristic warrior, David Leitch told Collider that Pitt still really wanted to be involved in the franchise. He recalled, "He kind of left the door open when we left that meeting, like, if you guys ever need anything, give me a call. I'd love to be involved." And Ryan just said, "Oh, I have an idea." So we started to think about what it could be, and the Vanisher thing was perfect. The only thing that Pitt requested as compensation for his appearance was a single cup of coffee. While Matt Damon and Brad Pitt's cameos were two of the most notable in Deadpool 2, it's probably Stan Lee's that was the most anticipated. Late in his life, the Marvel Comics co-creator made a number of cameos in the MCU and other Marvel-based films. But his Deadpool 2 appearance wasn't what viewers were expecting. Unlike in the first movie where Lee played a strip club DJ, his appearance in the sequel was purely two-dimensional. Deadpool 2 celebrates Lee with a giant mural, which can be seen when Domino is parachuting into the city. David Leitch explained to Collider that the colorful graffiti was included in the movie because scheduling issues precluded them from shooting Lee in the flesh. He elaborated, "We're always aware that you want to get a Stan Lee appearance in there, but it was more like what would work and what was the time and place, and our schedule was tight and things got away from us. So by the time we were done with the movie, we were thinking, where could we plug him in during reshoots?" Leitch denied at the time that Lee's absence was due to his rumored ill health. Sadly, Lee's health did begin to decline, and he passed away just a few months after the release of Deadpool 2. His last ever cameo was in Avengers Endgame. When it was announced that Domino would be a featured character in Deadpool 2, some fans were left wondering how exactly the film would portray her power of perfect luck. It seems that Ryan Reynolds noticed this, because Deadpool's rant during Domino's attempt at saving Russell makes that exact point in a pretty ironic way. In fact, Deadpool is so insistent that luck isn't a superpower that he mocks the person who came up with the idea in the first place. His insult doesn't make much sense unless you're familiar with the source material though.
What coked out, glass pipe sucking freak show comic book artist came up with that little chestnut? Probably a guy who can't draw feet!
So who actually is a guy who can't draw feet? That would be Rob Liefeld, comic book veteran and co-creator of the characters Deadpool, Domino, and Cable. Liefeld is infamous for avoiding having to draw feet as much as possible in his work, even though many other artists in the medium have followed his lead over the years. Ryan Reynolds reached out to clear the joke with Liefeld, who, despite the implication that he smokes crack, was thrilled to be included in the movie. He told Inverse, "There's no greater shout-out in the world." Deadpool 2 was full of surprises when it first came out, one of them being the presence of the supervillain Juggernaut. This wasn't the underwhelming Juggernaut from X-Men The Last Stand either. This was a fully CGI behemoth capable of ripping Deadpool in half like a Twinkie. But who could play such a beast of a man? Just like Mike Myers and Austin Powers, Ryan Reynolds plays both the anti-hero and the villain. But he wasn't actually supposed to do it, and he isn't named as the voice of Juggernaut in the credits. After Deadpool 2 was released, Reynolds revealed to Empire that he'd just been standing in until they could find a more suitable voice actor, which never ended up happening. As he put it, "I just did it as a kind of temp. It was this sort of Brooklyn brawler voice that we modulated in post and cranked up and gave it all this bass and reverberation. We didn't settle on that just because it was quality. We settled on that because we just didn't have any more budget left for other actors to jump in." David Leitch ended up doing motion capture for Juggernaut's face, which was brought to life thanks to the work of talented VFX artists.
You know, it has always been a dream of mine to see my face reflected in your helmet as you charge at me with murderous intent. I don't mean right now.
In nearly every single time travel movie, tampering with the past has disastrous consequences in the present. Deadpool 2 is one of the rare exceptions. Armed with Cable's time travel device, Wade makes some pretty major changes to the timeline with seemingly no ill effects. At least not until Deadpool and Wolverine, that is. He saves Vanessa by killing her attacker with a cream cheese spreader, takes out the mute version of Deadpool from X-Men Origins Wolverine, and puts a bullet in Ryan Reynolds' head before he can start production on Green Lantern. However, Deadpool 2 almost had a completely different, darker ending. Co-writer Rhett Reese said the team was initially happy with their decision to kill Vanessa off without resurrecting her. Reese told CBR, "We originally did not save her. It was interesting. We thought we might have to save her with the time machine, because the audience would be mad at us, but they were accepting of her being dead. Bringing Vanessa back was ultimately a last-minute decision, as they felt it was the best fit for the story and the future of the franchise. When they called Baccarin up to let her know, she was very receptive to the news." One of Wade's time-traveling adventures that didn't make it into the theatrical release of Deadpool 2 involved him going back in time to kill Adolf Hitler as a baby. In the deleted post-credit scene, he's ready to unleash hell on the newborn infant, but he starts to struggle with the decision. He eventually decides to let Cable do the dirty work for him.
I think we both know I don't have what it takes to do this.
The scene was eventually released as part of the Super Duper Cut, in August 2018. Ryan Reynolds told The Hollywood Reporter that it caused a debate behind the scenes, saying, "I always loved it because it created the same debate in our edit room as it does in the streets of the world. It was debated back and forth and over again. We were all a little nervous about it, wondering, is it too much? In the end, none of us could come to a consensus on how to handle it. So our final decision was to just not handle it, to just not put it in the movie."
What's up, everybody? Griffey here. So I thought it would be fun to go back and watch Deadpool to see how it's changed and what I recognize this time. So bring on the Deadpool and Rob McElhenney.
I know what it's like to not live up to expectations, to feel like nothing that you do will ever be good enough.
Ryan Reynolds had sucked across many superhero movies and many superhero universes, right? He played Hannibal in Blade 3, easily the worst and most forgettable Blade movie, his first foray into a disastrous Marvel movie. Is there a person on Earth who didn't think the Green Lantern was a bit of a swing and a miss? Watching Ryan Reynolds in a CG suit fight a yellow fart cloud? And then we did an entire video on X-Men Origins Wolverine in the myriad of mistakes of taking Deadpool the Merc with the mouth and making him a silent kind of Frankenstein emo. Thanks for watching, by the way. There was no track record that led us to believe that this movie was going to work, or that they would actually go far enough in the R rating to make Deadpool the movie it needed to be. So Ryan Reynolds had to become a crusader for his own cause. It was actually some miraculously leaked Deadpool footage that gave that internet that taste, that thirst for the Deadpool movie we should have had, that eventually led us here. And boy, were we all pleasantly surprised when it absolutely crushed.
Hashtag drive that.
The kind of surface level facade of Deadpool is it is prepubescent, childish gallows humor, right? Constant pop culture references, right? Non-stop jokes. This movie is like Meet the Spartans if it had actually ever had a funny joke in it. It's that kind of comedy, and it's fun.
Ripley from Alien 3.
You're old.
I mean, one of the greatest choices of this movie, who would have thought, is to not sew Ryan Reynolds' mouth shut. The reason you cast him in your movie is to say jokes really fast. What I was not expecting Deadpool to actually do so well is to create a real empathy and pathos for this character. He eventually meets a woman he falls in love with. They have a copious amount of very visually on-screen wrestling matches. Vanessa becomes the avatar for the audience to love him. She gives us permission to deal with his childlike facade. And watching Vanessa find this perfect balancing act where she can match the comedy of Wade, and they can have those kind of jokes that feel like they should be off-putting. To find two people at the extremes like that find each other, you never stop feeling this earnest connection and chemistry that they're growing. Go back and watch the scene where Wade gets his diagnosis that he has cancer and will not make it long.
There are certainly options we can look into. New drugs are being developed every day.
Did you expect a scene that emotionally poignant in the start of this Deadpool movie? A cake cannot be all frosting. There has to be something in the middle of it to put that frosting over. And so I think the comedy and the kind of crotch humor and all of those things are wrapped around this actual relationship, this actual story of two people who are dealing with a catastrophic crisis in the middle of their lives that is way more relatable than just an amazing military assassin who gets superpowers and wears a red suit, but somehow talks like everyone's 12-year-old nephew. And in the comments section, if we could just refrain from Griffey looks an awful lot like the bartender who they're not gonna talk about in this movie, if we could just not do that, I would appreciate it.
Wait, you're better than this. Join us. Use your powers for good.
Heads up.
Another amazing addition to this movie is the redemption of Colossus, right? Now, in the other X-Men movies, we had gotten a brief glimpse of a young boy who turns metallic, looking like Colossus, and that's it. That's all we ever got. And if you were a kid like me, Colossus always looks amazing in the comics. He was one of the most valuable Marvel trading cards. If you went to an arcade in the 90s, you definitely played the X-Men arcade, and a lot of people were fighting over who got to be Colossus. Now we have a Colossus who's worth cheering for, right? Colossus's persona is kind of like Hulk Hogan in the 80s, right? You know, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, We all know he was eating his vitamins through a syringe, but like still, we believed, right? That's kind of what Colossus is telling me, right? He's essentially gigantic, superpowered Danny Tanner from Full House. And just watching everyone kind of roll their eyes at him becomes one of the most fun elements and repeated gags of the movie. We also love him. He also becomes very lovable. And then when it's time to throw down, we remember that Colossus is a mutant to be feared. Drive by on Hulk Hogan? Sorry, bro.
Superhero landing. She gonna do a superhero landing. Wait for it.
This movie also on a very meta level plays as a fun attack on all of the Fox, especially comic book movies we had seen before. The X-Men are still wearing their terrible leather outfits. We have a teenager with a hideously long and stupid name and a hideously dumb power that's used to no good avail in this movie. We have a villain, a faceless villain who essentially we just call Francis over and over again, who wears like a generic army guy suit. He's kind of a mad scientist who has no verifiable list of demands or reasons why he's doing anything he's doing. And we have Gina Carano as just the hot but never talks henchman of the movie. God, remember those days? What a time to be alive. So you have all of the kind of things we remember from those early comic book movies, right? So while they're doing a very bland and vanilla kind of superhero story, Deadpool the whole time is riffing on it.
It's funny that I only ever see two of you. It's almost like the studio couldn't afford another X-Man.
This one is bad on purpose, which then becomes amazing, right? Francis in most movies is a reason to turn it off. In this movie, he becomes an amazing punching bag for Deadpool and audiences who have sat through a lot of bad comic book movies in the past.
Why?
So seeing Fox, who knew they were on their way out of the superhero game, give this team of creative filmmakers the ability to push as far as they needed to make Deadpool the way it had to be made for adult audiences, right? Was a breath of fresh air. We have never seen a comic book movie like that since Howard the Duck and his kind of adult sex industry job he had in Cleveland.
Just can't seem to find the right man.
Maybe it's not a man you should be looking for.
And I think you see nowadays with things like The Boys becoming wildly popular as a TV show, I think we see that audiences are ready for these more mature playgrounds with these characters, right? We're more willing to watch superheroes that behave badly, that speak badly, and that do unspeakable things, right? It did feel fresh and new when we saw Deadpool doing these things on our local movie theater screens.
Want to talk about what's haunting you, or should we wait for a third act flashback?
Go f yourself.
And Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds have been doing this dance in public and online for a long time. And I think we saw in Deadpool 2, the value of giving Deadpool a curmudgeon-y old hardcore soldier type to play off of, the way that it really makes Deadpool's comedy more effective. It becomes a nice fire and ice combo, right? It becomes these two things that make each more than the value of the sum of their parts. I don't know how long before we run out of the ability to keep watching these movies, but if this is it, I couldn't imagine a better partner for the last ride than Hugh Jackman's Wolverine.
There's nothing stronger than the bond between a man and his parasite. We're taking a look back at the iconic symbiote's debut solo film and the parts of it that went over everyone's heads the first time around. Venom has hidden secrets to uncover from the very first scene. The opening crash of the Life Foundation's space shuttle leaves no survivors except for these sample alien life forms and the one lucky astronaut who finds himself possessed by one of Marvel's symbiotes. From their control center in San Francisco, CEO Carlton Drake and his team oversee the wreckage in Malaysia, noting the name of the single surviving astronaut.
That's Jameson.
This quick reference is paid off later in the film's end credits, where we learn that the character's full name is actually J.J. Jameson III. In the original Marvel Comics, John Jameson is the son of none other than J. Jonah Jameson, Peter Parker's boss at the Daily Bugle. The younger Jameson is indeed an astronaut and eventually the Man-Wolf. While he's not often associated with Venom in the comics, there is one other version of the symbiote's origin that connects the pair. In the 1994 Spider-Man animated series 3-parter, The Alien Costume, it's John Jameson who brings the Venom symbiote to Earth after a space mission gone wrong. When the ship crashes, the symbiote escapes, and little does Jameson know, but his adventures in outer space change the entire course of Spider-Man's life and serve as the basis for future Venom origins. While fans of the Venom Lethal Protector comic series will undoubtedly recognize the Life Foundation as a major antagonist in that book's initial run, its name in the movie is also an unintentional reference to one of the more ridiculous fan theories in the history of the franchise. Carlton Drake's desire to explore the unknown universe and find life forms among the stars feels awfully reminiscent of the 2017 film Life. This sci-fi horror flick is not connected to Venom in any official capacity, but there was a time during the film's production when fans thought it might be a secret prequel. The fact that a trailer for Life included a shot from Spider-Man 3, along with the premise of the film being the discovery of a goo-like alien life form that starts eating those around it, caused some to theorize that Life and Venom were connected. Paired with the fact that Life screenwriters Paul Wernick and Rhett Reese had previously written a draft of Venom, the connection seemed obvious. The duo would later joke that Life actually was an unintentional Venom prequel, but it was all in jest. Still, that Venom, released just a year after Life, first hit theaters and features a villainous organization named the Life Foundation seems almost too good to be a coincidence.
Traitor, have a nice life.
When Eddie interviews Carlton Drake early on in Venom, he mentions that Drake, at only 19 years old, had discovered a gene therapy that tripled the life expectancy of those suffering from pancreatic cancer. It's a small line that establishes Drake's supposedly noble intentions with his vast wealth and resources, but it also gives Eddie an opportunity to discuss Drake's questionable experiments. While Drake began the Life Foundation as a means to reach for the stars, there's no doubt that he saw the potential in the symbiote's healing properties as well, which can do everything from resetting and healing broken bones to quite possibly resurrecting the dead. In the comics, there are quite a few strong connections between the Venom character and the cure for cancer. In Brian Michael Bendis' Ultimate Spider-Man run, a revised origin for an alternate universe Venom reveals that Peter Parker and Eddie Brock's fathers had been working together on a cure for cancer when they first developed the symbiote. Likewise, in the mainstream Marvel universe, there was a period in the early 2000s when Eddie had cancer himself, which the Venom symbiote apparently fed on in order to increase its power. However, the 2018 Venom series would retcon that diagnosis as a lie that the symbiote told Eddie to keep the pair from separating, which might be even more dark. In the Sony Spider-Man universe, Venom comes from outer space, but in real life, the idea for the character didn't just fall from the sky. The goopy villain was created by writer David Michelinie and artist Todd McFarlane and made his debut in late 1987. Venom has been a consistent foe of the wall crawler ever since, and even though Peter Parker doesn't make an appearance in the Venom solo film, the symbiote's creators still get a shout-out. It's easy to miss, but the law firm that Michelle Williams' Anne Wang gets fired from is called Michelinie and McFarlane. That's not all, though. There's also a reference to a place called the Schuler Building during Eddie and Venom's escape from the Life Foundation security team. But who actually is Schuler? Randy Schuler was a Marvel fan from Illinois who wrote to the comic company in the early 1980s with an original idea: a black stealth costume for Spider-Man. While his concept for the origins for the suit was a bit different than the eventual alien symbiote angle that Marvel came up with, then editor-in-chief Jim Shooter paid Schuler for the idea that eventually became Venom. That said, making the suit its own character wasn't Schuler's cup of tea. As he wrote for CBR in 2007, "I was never a fan of the costume-turned-villain idea." Venom's taste for human brains is pretty morbid, but he doesn't just like them because they're chewy. Instead, the symbiote craves a specific chemical component called phenethylamine. In his first solo movie, Venom is constantly talking about eating people, and he actually does manage to consume a few heads along the way. But at the end of the film, Eddie makes Venom swear not to eat any more human beings, or at the very least, not any of the good ones.
But how does one tell the difference?
It's super simple. I mean, you just have to, you can intuit it, you can sense it, sometimes you can even feel it.
Anyone who's seen Venom Let There Be Carnage knows that Venom goes on to replace his cravings for gray matter with a fanatical love for chocolate. But that's referenced at the end of the first film as well. Why chocolate? Because the human brain and chocolate both contain phenethylamine, which can improve one's mood and attention span. There's comic book precedent for this too. At the end of the 4-part comic arc Venom: The Hunger, Eddie Brock discovers that Venom can survive just as well off chocolate as he can human flesh. As Eddie explains in Venom: Sign of the Boss #1, it's a bit more socially acceptable and pleasant. Throughout all of Venom, the alien symbiote constantly berates Eddie for being a loser. He's lost his fiancée, he's lost his job, he's lost his apartment, and now with Venom riding shotgun, he's slowly losing his sanity too. Venom never wastes an opportunity to put Eddie down and continually forces him to submit to his will. However, there's a moment during the film's climax that offers a different perspective on Venom's behavior. It's no excuse for the constant name-calling, but it seems that Venom's verbal, venom is a direct result of his own inferiority complex within his species. Unlike Carlton Drake's symbiote Riot or even Carnage in the sequel, Venom can't create physical weapons. Instead, he has to rely on his tendrils or use makeshift shields in combat. Riot notes in their final battle that Venom has a strong host, implying that Eddie is the only reason that Venom can successfully engage in combat with him. It's clear that on his homeworld, Venom was somewhat subservient to the other symbiotes in charge, and his decision to leave his people behind and live on Earth instead was never much of a struggle for him. Some Marvel comics have characterized Venom as an outcast among his own race, the Clintar, which the movies ran with as well. Stan Lee's movie cameos have long been beloved by fans, and the Marvel Legends appearance in Venom hit theaters just 1 month before his death at age 95. While he would sometimes show up to crack a joke at a hero's expense, he's also been known to offer characters encouragement at important moments. That's what Eddie Brock gets when he crosses paths with Lee, who seems to have overheard a conversation he had with Anne.
Hey, don't give up on her. Either of you.
We won't.
Who's that guy?
Okay.
It's a sweet and funny moment, but wait, how is Lee able to tell that Eddie is hosting a hidden buddy? It's a bit of a stretch, but it might have something to do with the MCU. Lee is seen talking to a group of Watchers in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, implying that he's an informant for the multiversal beings. But the connections to the MCU don't stop there. Eddie and Venom eventually hop over to the MCU themselves at the end of Venom: Let There Be Carnage, which ties directly into the post-credit scene from Spider-Man: No Way Home. Did sorcery somehow send Stan Lee to Venom's world? Stranger things have happened in the Marvel multiverse. When Anne breaks off her engagement with Eddie 15 minutes into Venom, it doesn't come as a surprise. The way she puts it, he doesn't sound like the greatest fiancé.
You are pathologically self-absorbed. Your ego requires constant attention, and you're stubborn as hell.
Taking back agency in her own life after she loses her job, Anne moves on from Eddie, gets her own place, starts dating a nice doctor, and finds work elsewhere. But although Eddie does find his way back into Anne's life, Venom doesn't end with the hero getting the girl, and that was by design. As Michelle Williams told The Hollywood Reporter, "When we started making Venom, I said to the director, Ruben Fleischer, that I know I can't exactly wear a Me Too t-shirt, but that's the feeling that I want in this movie." The star made it clear from the get-go that she wanted Anne to have the type of agency that other superhero female leads often lack, which no doubt led to Anne becoming She-Venom for her pivotal role in the third act. She continued, "I just wanted the story to have constant nods to the male-female interplay that is happening now." After Venom was released, many fans took to the internet to talk all about Symbrock, the romantic ship between Eddie and his alien parasite. Among other factors, a certain line from the film was interpreted by some to be more intimate than threatening.
I am Venom, and you are mine.
It wasn't long before fanfiction and fan art of the pair started making its way online. Soon after, Sony got wise to the free publicity and recut the Venom trailer in preparation for the home video release that December. The official rom-com trailer spoofs romantic comedy cliches from the early 2000s and 2010s. Fans would react in a similar way to the 2021 sequel, Venom: Let There Be Carnage, which was deemed a breakup movie by audiences. For many, the idea that Venom would get his own feature film entirely independent of Spider-Man once seemed unfathomable. Venom's origins are so distinctly tied to Spidey, after all, that it's hard to imagine how Eddie Brock and the symbiote could be united without Peter Parker somehow being involved. However, the first Venom movie proved that the characters work even better as anti-heroes than they do as villains, even though the studio still calls it Sony's Spider-Man universe. But if you felt that something was missing from Venom, you weren't alone. Rumors were circulated online that Tom Holland was present on the Venom set filming a potential cameo appearance, but director Ruben Fleischer set the record straight. He told IGN, "I think we're hoping to build to that, but no, at no point was Tom Holland going to be in this movie." Nevertheless, Venom has since connected to both the Spider-Verse series of animated films as well as the MCU, with Venom even seeing Holland's Spidey unmasked on television. Whether a variant of Holland's Spider-Man character exists within the convoluted SSU timeline or not, the fact remains that Eddie Brock and Venom are doing just fine on their own. A Spider-Man showdown would be a blast, but Venom has made a name for himself beyond his web-slinging nemesis.
What's up, everybody? Griffey here. I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to ruin my weekend watching X-Men Origins Wolverine so we could discuss Wolverine and Deadpool's first on-screen rendezvous.
You actually go outside in these things? What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
So after 3 X-Men movies that just kept getting more and more painful to the point that by the time you get to X-Men Last Stand, we had given up, right? We're like, don't stand anymore, just die. As you watch your heroes taking their triumphant last stand, you just kind of hope that the theater would melt, right? That you would be ushered out on a wave of melting celluloid, right? We were so over the X-Men franchise. So Fox finds themselves trying to restart a new franchise with just Wolverine. If we can make a great Wolverine movie that fans will like, can become a franchise, and we can perpetuate this comic book monopoly that Fox had at the time. The problem is that it feels like Fox made every wrong decision along the way, right? What you see in this movie is a movie studio that is just trying to force the IP into a realm where they can still be in charge without any concept of what actually made Wolverine or the IP cool. It did lead, however, to Ryan Reynolds finally playing Deadpool, right? The character that fans and audiences online had been pining for him to get a chance to play for a long time. Ryan Reynolds, due to the writer's strike, actually had to write and rewrite a lot of the Deadpool dialogue on the fly. So in the middle of this absolute travesty that is Deadpool in this movie, you do get the chance to see Ryan Reynolds finally sink his teeth into and try to begin wrestling with the comic book character he was born to play.
You whip out a couple of swords at your ex-girlfriend's wedding, they will never, ever forget it.
We start the film and we see a beautiful young Wade Wilson who's part of an assassin team, right? We get some of the wisecracking in the elevator. You start to see the foundations of a Deadpool on screen. It seems like this is going to work. And then Deadpool erupts out of the elevator, does some kind of weird Matrix ballet where he blocks all the bullets, ruthlessly kills a guy, and then essentially doesn't talk for the rest of the movie. The next time we see Deadpool, he is mangled and his face is sewn together, and they have this kind of terrible CG that masks his mouth. When your character is lovingly known to comic book fandom as the merc with the mouth, the character that looks out of the page and talks to us, the character that gives us a wink and a nod, that as he's murdering and killing everyone, we can do that with a laugh and a joke and realize that these stories are not that serious. Our merc with the mouth is reduced to a sewn up hodgepodge of powers that have nothing to do with Deadpool. Now his swords come out of his hand like Wolverine, right? Now he has Cyclops laser eyes, which he essentially never uses, and raccoon eyes. I guess this lets us know that there's a lot of inner turmoil that Deadpool's unable to express to us. He still has disco bell bottoms, so at least there's that. There is almost no sadder thing I've ever seen in the history of comic book movies than Deadpool finally fighting Wolverine on screen and not talking and not commenting and not giving us a laugh and a joke, a wink and a nod to how cool this moment should have been for us. Instead, he's just doing laser eyes and claw hands, and it's one of the saddest moments in the entire history, if not the lamest decision in the history of comic book movies. So this movie ends up looking a lot like Deadpool in this movie, right? Kind of a Frankenstein together hodgepodge of things we're supposed to like. They actually form this horrifying visage looking us back in the face, trying to murder our hearts and souls.
Are you Remy LeBeau?
Do I owe you money?
The biggest sin number 2 of the movie, Gambit, right? Gambit is so insanely bad in this movie. Gambit is the coolest Mr. Steal Your Girl who has ever existed in the history of comic books. I will not be taking arguments on that point. We see him as Riggins from Friday Night Lights, not the casting we all wanted. We see him playing cards, and then all of a sudden, he's gone. When Gambit leaps back in with his giant stick and lands in that alley and announces himself to the fight. I don't think there has ever been a moment that has landed as more of a wet towel. It was so pathetic and bad.
The name's Gambit, mon ami. Remember it.
Gambit in X-Men 97, just imagine the Gambit we saw on that show, the Gambit on Genosha. He makes sure that we all remember his name, that Rogue will never again question who the man was. Imagine that Gambit, and then think back to what Origins did to him. And it will really illustrate crystal clear in your mind the sin against this wonderful character.
Fred Dukes? That looks like the creature that ate Fred Dukes. Hey, be nice, man.
But even now, as much as I hated Deadpool and Gambit, it's kind of hard to make the case that Wolverine in a boxing match with the Blob who can't find a shirt that fits him is not the worst moment in comic book movie history. How about when he says, "Bub," which is the iconic Wolverine line, Did you call me Blob? And that's what starts our titular boxing match? This is our heavyweight, did you call me Blob? What is happening? Why is this in the movie?
Did you just call me Blob?
I would challenge you, think of any moment that misses the mark more. Who enjoyed this moment? Who is it for? What does this scene do except for specifically insult fans of this genre? X-Men Origins Wolverine's great superpower is reminding us of things we like and showing them how immediately uncool they can become. Here's another thing that really kind of stabs you in the heart. This movie opens exceptionally well. It's a very tense kind of horror movie opening, right? The body horror of the bone claws coming out the first time as he leaps and attacks. In fact, watching the two brothers enlist in the military multiple times under what must be many different aliases to continually fight in the Civil War, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, they're storming the beaches of Normandy, is actually the movie we should have watched. Right? This should have been Highlander. They should have stolen the framework of what might be the best movie of all time, Highlander, and just done that. Why are we not watching these brothers go through life dealing with their own acts and what they are, and using these conflicts to come back to each other? Is it terrible every time we watch Liev Schreiber get on his hands and feet and do that weird kind of carousel bouncy creature thing? Yes, it's horrible and it's bad and it hurts me. But when we watch him and Hugh Jackman talk in these cutting innuendos, these reminders of the past and what is lost, it actually resembles an amazing movie for a couple frames here and there. And the fact that they had an amazing Wolverine and Hugh Jackman and an amazing Sabretooth and Liev Schreiber, and this is all they used it for, is really the great missed opportunity of the film, right? They had the idea of the story they needed, they just cut it short so they could fill the movie with bullshit that we didn't want.
She can influence people as long as she touches them. Quite a useful tool in a seduction. It was never real, my friend.
It was real for me.
It's hard because I keep saying in my mind, what is actually the worst moment in this Wolverine origin movie? And it's hard to pick. We don't see a lot of dramatic give and take. There's not a lot of pull. Wolverine essentially just heals from everything, gets his scratchy claws. He doesn't save his girlfriend because he has to go to his logging job. That's one of those things, that's just bad screenwriting. There is no universe where we imagine that Wolverine, who has seen all of these things, is like, don't worry, the kindergarten kids will save her. How many kindergarten kids can defeat Sabretooth? 5, 6? No, Wolverine would be in that classroom. He would, like Billy Madison, be in that classroom, dodgeball ready, to make sure that Sabretooth pays if he comes messing around. I don't think she was a good teacher. I think that's what I'm saying. I think she was maybe a bad teacher, and maybe these kids are lucky that she was a traitor at the end, and she ran away. And I don't care that she had a sister who was abducted, who may or may not be Emma Frost, and I don't care that Wolverine forgave her and helped free other mutants, right? Because she's a bad teacher, and he's a bad guy, and why did this movie have to happen to me?